Glisson. I'm married to Vicki Yates Glisson, and Vicki and I are the third deed owners of the property that we'll be looking at later. The second is represented by Joe Brown here, and the first is represented by Don Carlin in the back, and we'll be seeing and hearing from each one of them as the day goes by. What I want to do right now is give a few opening remarks about what we're up to today and give you an idea of what was going on at the time and how all this hangs together. In 1776, there was no Taylorsville, but there was a Flynn settlement. There were very few things from 1776 that exist in Kentucky today in any sort of its original form. Very few things were even established in Kentucky because there was no Kentucky, there was no town, there was only Virginia, and this was wilderness. And what was happening at this place was in the very earliest time of the American settlement, and this was under British control at that time. What we're looking at today are four men. The four men have to do with the four individuals that are related to this property, and the single property that gave rise to two other properties, one being Taylorsville, the first town on Brashears Creek, and second, the first estate in what is now Spencer County from 1824, when Spencer County became a county. The history of this area goes back to before the beginning of the United States, as all of you know. In fact, it goes back to right after the time of Columbus, and this gives rise to the various folks vying for different property in this area and how Flynn settlement came to be. The idea is that back in 1493, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, he came back to Spain, and King Ferdinand indicated that this is now all Spanish territory from the Pacific to the Atlantic coast. The French in turn then said, no, this is French territory, here in the middle anyway, from Quebec down to what is now the Louisiana area and all the Mississippi River Valley. King James I then in 1609 issued the Second Virginia Charter, and in 1609 declared that the Virginia colony from the Atlantic to the other ocean is all a part of English territory under the colony of Virginia. And so this area was smack dab in the middle of that, and the Indian tribes had all made their alignments or not with the various European factions, and sooner or later, with all these different claims on the properties, this meant war. And war came. And the war that came was what's called the French and Indian War. It ended in 1763 when King George III declared victory and then bought the land from the Iroquois nation. The Iroquois had fought with the British. The Algonquin speakers fought with the French. The Algonquins included the Shawnee Indians. They lost the battles. They lost France, part of North America, and the English then claimed this area. In 1763, King George III, when he purchased all the land from the Iroquois that went to the Mississippi River and included about 7 states. So not only Virginia, but also what's West Virginia, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and a tip of Minnesota. That 7+ state region was all considered a part of Botetourt County, and that was all Virginia. And the king said, I don't really want all you settlers coming out past the Appalachians in this anymore. This then disturbed the colonists because under the Virginia Charter of 1609 and the Magna Carta from 1215, the king did not take property away from his loyal subjects. The loyal subjects were able to own their property, which was the superior method of the British crown over the French and Spanish crowns, is that individuals could own things. But now the king was taking it away, and this outraged the folks in Virginia. So 1769 happens, and the Paris Peace Treaty is signed, and the king indicates that there will not be any colonists out past the Alleghenies. The Virginia legislature didn't really appreciate that, and that gave rise to a lot of things that were going on that we're going to talk about today. And from this area, from the time of Flynn settlement establishment in 1776, there were a lot of changes in the world because of what had happened with the King's pronouncement with the original land that was taken away from the Virginia colony. During that period of time of 1772 to the time the deed that we're talking about today on the Flynn settlement was established, there were 17 years. And during that 17-year period from what occurred in 1776 approximately to 1793, those 17 years, there were different governments over this place where we're sitting right now. There were 2 different countries, England and the United States. There were 5 different counties in 2 different states. That 17 years is a remarkable period, and it's how our 4 different men kind of come together over a period of time and a timeline. So I think about it in terms of the timeline of the 5 counties. The 5 counties that you might want to keep in the back of your mind. I know it's a little confusing, but you've heard of them. In 1772 to 1776, there was Fincastle County. And the king established that as a part of Virginia. Botetourt County was too big. So a land mass the size of Kentucky, West Virginia, and the western part of Virginia all became Fincastle County. It was during that period of time that Thomas Carlin and Peter Flynn entered this territory. The second county was a county divided after the Revolution, Kentucky County, Virginia. And that existed from 1777 to 1780. And that was a result of the war that was going on at the time. From 1780 to 1784, it became Jefferson County, Virginia. And that was actually 1780, it occurred for a longer period of time, and many important events occurred during that time. There was a brief time where there was a Jefferson County, Kentucky, but that only lasted for 3 weeks. It became Shelby County right after that, and Shelby County existed until Spencer County was formed in 1824. So how does this all relate to our guys that you're going to hear about? Chris Yoder, Don Carlin are here, and they did a lot of work, and it's really a labor of love on both of their behalf. They haven't met until now, but it was because of these individuals' work and what I learned from the Browns regarding the property that these things all came together. Vaucluse is the first estate of Spencer County that goes back to around 1801 when Jacob Yoder bought the property, whereas Taylorsville, 1799, Thomas Carlin sold off to Richard Taylor to start a town. Peter Flynn and Thomas Carlin worked together to establish Flynn Settlement. Flynn Settlement was granted to Peter Flynn by the Virginia Land Commission, which was the authority of the Virginia legislature, and Patrick Henry, our first governor. And the receipt of the land grant is available for your review, and it refers to some critical pieces when you're headed out to the property today. This is due north, which is about this way, I believe. You'll see a large farm on 55 to your left. It's a beautiful farm. It's right after the strip mall, and it sits with some buildings on it, but a lot of green. It's a soybean field out there. And that used to be called Duck Pond back in the days of the original land grant from 1780. 1780 is when the commission met together, and Thomas Carlin then reported that Peter Flynn had settled this by before 1778, and he'd been here for over a year. And the significance of that is that we know from George Rogers Clark's diary that Peter Flynn was taken prisoner of war at Fort Herod on 28 March 1777, and there would have been not enough time to have done all that in 1777, as he was at Fort Herod and busy being a prisoner of war. So So it had to be at least by 76. It could have been 75. We don't know. We know Thomas Carlin came into land in 1774, along with John Floyd, under the leadership of William Preston, who was appointed as the chief surveyor for the region. Thomas Carlin became the very good friend of Jacob Yoder. We don't know exactly how that happened, but we know that his brother, Peter Carlin, was at Valley Forge with Jacob Yoder about the same time, and their regiments were next to each other at Valley Forge. And we know that that John Brown, his first son, married the second daughter of Jacob Yoder, and that's the relationship to John Brown, our first senator, who came out and did the legal work and made Kentucky a state through the legislature of the United States, the first Congress, in 1792. So what we want to talk about today then are these four men. Chris Yoder and Thomas Carlin are going to, and Don Carlin are going to talk about Thomas and Peter and relate some of these things. When we go out to the property today, we'll do several things. I'll give some heads up about that, but right now stay hydrated. And I want to emphasize how important it's been to have met up with these two individuals. The first one that I met with by phone was Chris Yoder, and he has the newsletter, which is remarkable, and it's quite a wealth of knowledge and led me to understand a number of things about the property. So I want to turn your attention now to Chris Yoder, who'll be talking about Captain Jacob Yoder, who came to be on the property. Chris?